Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the ninth episode of Power Hour presented by Intelligent Applications. My name is Fazil and I'll be your host, and with me is Riyad.
Hey everyone.
All right, so today is the fourth installment of our business case, the dashboards series. Today we're doing some more sales data analysis, continuing from where we left off in the last session, and we will also be exploring DAX a little bit. Now, the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is this card right here. So this card, we're just pulling in the value data field from the orders table. There is another way we could do this by writing a measure. Um, so how we would go about doing that is we right click and we select new measure. This brings up the DAX editor. It comes up as measure equals. So this is the part of Power BI that allows you to write your custom functions or formulas, that sort of thing. Really gives you a lot of options in terms of your calculations and reporting. The same function that we had there. So let's call this total sales. And we put the equal sign. So we start our formula and we want to sum. Right? And you can see as you type a function, Power BI brings up the options of the functions it has. So it has a list. Let's click on sum. It immediately adds the parentheses for us. And we want to sum the value column in the orders table. Right? So I type value. And you see all the value columns show up here, but we want the one that is in the orders table. So we click on that and we close parentheses and hit enter. Right, so we have a measure here, all total sales, and let's see what happens. All right, so just for the sake of comparison, I'm going to add a new card and I'm going to pull in that new measure, total sales. Right, so it's identical.
Before we move on, Thomas wants to know how exactly does the DAX syntax work?
Okay, sure. So DAX, it stands for data analysis expressions, right? And I'm just gonna run through with you how the syntax works. So let me just share my tab with you. So you can find all the information about DAX on Microsoft documentation, right? So here we have this syntax. Now it's broken up into 6 parts here, right? So there's the measure name. Then we have the operator, so equal sign, indicating the beginning of the formula. And then we have the DAX function. And you could take a look at the documentation for a list of all the functions in Power BI. There's a lot. And right, so once we have the function, inside the parentheses is what we call the context. The reference table or the context is the sales, and the column it's referencing is the sales amount, right? And the function we're using is a sum, so it's a sum aggregate. So in our case, very similar here. We can see, let's go back to the original DAX we had. Right, so we have the name of the measure, total sales. We have our equal sign. Then we call our DAX function the sum. In the parentheses, we have the context table, which is the orders table, and we are summing the column value. All right, so continuing on, We're speaking about doing a DAX with a filter attached. So when we add the calculate function, the expression is the sum of the value column in the orders table. But when we use the calculate function, it gives us this option by pressing the comma, or in some cases the semicolon, to add a filter. And here we could type, so let's say we want to see only the sales value sum by one of our customers, let's say Metro. So we would say customer name equals, and we would type Metro's name, right? Close parentheses, we click enter. A few seconds, and it has created a formula for calculating the total sales by Metro, right? So this 107K on the card, if we check it here, it should give us that same number, right? 107K. All right, cool. So now that we have kind of introduced you guys to simple DAX, we just want to show you guys a bit more on what you can do. Some of the most popular things people ask on how to do when doing a simple time series graph or sales analysis. So for the first graph, right, I said this would be a sales versus target analysis. Now you would say, but hey, you're doing the same thing that you guys did on the first page, right? So here we have sales versus target on this graph as well. But this time I'm going to show you guys how to do a cumulative sales versus cumulative target, right? So it's a bit more DAX that we're going to do, a little more intermediate, but just follow me, ask questions if you guys get stuck, right? All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to remove this target line. We are going to use the cumulative instead. All right. Okay, so this is fine. We could leave value as the bars on the graph. On orders, right click and select new measure. Let's call this, and just follow me for a minute, right? Let's call this cumulative value. And there are multiple ways that you guys could do this cumulative DAX, okay? So because we are using a date slider at the bottom, we want our cumulative line to be dynamic and adjust with the date filter. So this is what we're going to do, right? We're going to say, so we name the DAX, the measure, cumulative value, and then we're going to add our function. So calculate, and we start with a simple expression. What we want to do, we want to sum the values in the table orders, right? Close parentheses, and we want to add an argument or a filter to this data, right? So what we use is a function called dates between, right? So if we're doing a cumulative, we want to start at some point and end at some point, and we want to do the cumulative between that region, right? So date between, and here you would add the most granular level on your date table. So we have the date key, right? So the date key, and then we begin filling out the requirements of the dates between function. So you see it prompts you here. It tells you what the function is, dates between. you need to specify your dates column, a start date, and an end date, right? And the function returns the dates between two given dates. So the first date, so the start date, we will use another function called first date, and we will select all the dates that are selected in date key. What that means is all the dates that are selected by this date filter is represented in this context here, right? So first date, all selected dates, date key. Right now, I understand that this might be a bit intermediate level or maybe even advanced to some of you guys, but just bear with me, and you could copy and paste this and use it if you want. But it's good to get an idea of what it is you're doing, right? And we have the end date, and here we will use a function max. So we will always get the last date or the maximum date in the date range selected as the end date, right? So max, and again we reference our date key column, right? Close parentheses to complete our function, our DAX, and we hit the enter key. So let's drag this new DAX, this measure cumulative value, into the line values data field on our visual. And we should get something like that, right? So we know it's working. This is how your cumulative graph should look. You could see the values incrementing every month. And we could also use our date slider to adjust. All right. OBI is moving a bit slow on me today. Maybe have too many things running in the back. All right, so you can see the graph adjust with our date slider. So we know it's dynamic and functioning as intended. All right, but this graph needs a little bit of tweaking because, as you can see, because of the values of the cumulative function, it has shrunk the bars of the value because it's so low in comparison to the cumulative. So we need to enable the secondary axis of this graph. So the bar value would be on the left y-axis, and the cumulative value would be on the right y-axis. How do you do that? We click on the graph, we go to the Format tab, we go to y-axis, we scroll all the way down until we see Show Secondary. Click on that, and boom, we have a nice looking graph. We have our bar value and the cumulative on separate y-axes. Right, now just to distinguish this a bit, let's just change the color of the cumulative value. Let's say this is yellow. Yeah, that could work. All right, so we're 75% done. We have our cumulative value, and we could call this cumulative sales. Yeah, so you guys could just relabel your graph accordingly, right?
Fazil, so we currently have the cumulative value line on the graph. Catalina wants to know how can we show trend lines on the graphs?
Okay, so the trend lines, I was gonna show you guys that a bit later. So stay tuned, don't leave. We're gonna show you guys that in a few minutes, right? I was supposed to show you guys this as well. So this is the alternative cumulative function that you could use if you're probably not using a date slicer. Right, so you're basically doing the same thing. You're summing some quantity, and the filter you would apply is to all dates in the date table as long as the date is less than or equal to the max date. Yeah, so basically it would check every day in the date table for the values once it is less than or equal to the maximum date. So we have cumulative sales, and this analysis is supposed to be sales versus target. So let's do cumulative target. Is you can copy this DAX. So you can do Control C on your keyboard, or you can do normal click on copy and go to orders, new measure. Oops. Right, paste our function. Okay, so we have cumulative target. So we name our DAX, and it's the same formula we did for sales value, except we have substituted that reference or the context, which was sales value, and we have changed it with sales targets, right? So it's referencing the sales target table and the target value column, right? We could hit enter and we just drag this cumulative target, right? So we get something like that. So that should complete our graph. We have values on the bars, and we have cumulative sales and cumulative target as lines. So clearly you can see when you were matching or below or above your targets for a particular period. Really interesting. Cumulative DAX is something that people are always asking us how to do that on Power BI, or even when we started using Power BI, we were like, how to do a cumulative DAX, and now you have this resource, and we've showed you guys how simple it is to do the cumulative DAX, right? So we're giving you guys like trademark secrets here. Just joking. Right, Riyad, any questions?
Not as yet. One thing I'd just like to add,
Yeah.
when creating the measures, I think it would be helpful if we tell the users that the Power BI measures that we create are similar to those of Excel with respect to the functions that are available.
Yeah. Yeah.
As well as how it's calculated. But the difference in the calculations being that with Excel, you use rows to calculate the data, cells to calculate the data, while
Yeah, it's more on the
columns and rows.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, that's actually a good point, because I guess a lot of people who are interested in Power BI are coming from Excel background mostly. I think it's fair to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gonna duplicate this page again to show you another analysis technique. using the cumulative function. All right, so here is what we're gonna do. We're gonna strip away all the values that we have here. Actually, let's leave cumulative sales, and let's leave let's pull in total sales. Yeah, so okay, so I have total sales and cumulative sales, but one of the more common things that analysis techniques that we use is year-on-year comparison. So basically, how am I doing compared to the same period last year? How am I doing compared to last year? That sort of thing. That question arises, and we're gonna show you guys how you can do that on Power BI. Right, so I already have half the information I want on my graph. I have the total sales and the total cumulative sales for the period selected in my date slicer, which is, all right, let's just make this a little bit easier and move it to January. All right, so January 2020 to, let's say, September 2020. Right, let's just adjust that because our data ends in July 2020. All right, this is fine. All right, so basically what we want to do is we want to create DAX measures to calculate the values for the same period last year. And it's so easy that Power BI even has a DAX function called same period last year. So it makes your life really simple. All right, so to get started, let's do the total sales for the same period last year. All right, so we would have had this simple DAX. Okay, so we need to change this back to what it originally supposed to be, which is right. So sum orders value. All right, we'll fix that. That's our total sales. So let's go new measure. So the DAX we're looking at is sales, and I'm just going to put LY for last year, right? So sales last year equals, we start with the calculate function because we want to do some expression and then another argument, right? So calculate, we're going to do the same thing, sum of value in the orders table. We're going to close that up. We're going to use a comma or a semicolon in some cases to move on to the filter or argument for our expression. And here we want to use the function in Power BI called same period last year. Really simple. And you just add your date field, which is the date key in your date table. Complete your function with the parentheses and you click enter. So let's click on our visual and let's pull in the sales last year value into the column values. All right, so here our visual is set to start column chart and line. We want to just adjust that to the one next door, which is line and clustered column chart. All right, so that looks much better, right? So we have the lighter blue being the total sales for the current year, and the darker blue would be sales last year. So for the same period last year, that's what the sales were. Example, let's say in February, this year we had 45,371 in sales, and last year we had 37,313. So according to this graph, in February we had more sales than last year, right? So just to round off this this particular analysis, we want to do the cumulative line for the sales same period last year, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna copy this formula again. So this was the cumulative, this is the DAX for the cumulative value. We wanna do a copy. Then we wanna go to new measure. Power BI, come on, okay. Right, so I paste my DAX. Of course, we can't have two DAX with the same exact name, so that's something you guys should know. So we need to make this different. So let's say cumulative value last year's LY, and we need to modify this to actually make it the cumulative value of last year, right? So the function remains the same, calculate sum of the values in the order table. And right as we start this argument for the filter, we use our function same period last year and encapsulate it in parentheses. Right, and that should be okay. Click enter. And we should have this DAX completed called cumulative value LY. So we want to click on our visual and pull in that DAX into the line values. Right, so you have a comparison cumulatively of how you would do in this year compared to the same period last year. And this is really helpful and very, I guess, common in these sales type or time series type analyses. All right, so we could just change the data color for a little more clarity. We could have last year's cumulative value as red. Right, so based on this data for the same period last year, we are ahead in terms of sales. Right, and you could hover and see the values, and as always with these graphs, you can go to format and you can enable data labels, right? And you could modify it to best suit your needs. So in this case, I would take off the backgrounds and you could see the data labels of it. Last thing I want to show you guys before we take some more questions is a product analysis page. All right, I'm going to copy this date slider across. Right, and you would notice when you copy slicers or filters, it gives you the option to synchronize them. So whatever you select here would be on the other pages as well. In this case, it don't really need that much. And the graph I want to use is a clustered column chart. Right, and we're just going to do a quick product type analysis. We want to see sales by product category on a monthly basis. right? So what do? We pull in our axis as usual. So we have one tier, one tier, and we want to see the number of units sold. So in this case, we want to see the number of units sold, not value. Right? So we have a bar graph with the number of product units sold by month, and we just want to break this up by product category. So expand the products and pull in product category into the legend. Right? Really simple. So you can see how each product is trending on a monthly basis. Right, and this is quite high level. You could go lower as you need. Right, we could also add a product filter, product category filter. All right, cool. Any questions on chat?
Not just yet, but I guess since we were talking about which units were trending, I guess this graph could be used as an example for Catalina's question previously on showing the trending lines on the graph.
Yeah, we could do that. All right, so basically Power BI has some built-in analytics. So depending on the type of visual that you select, so mainly some of the bar graphs and definitely the line graphs, you would see this third tab next to the format option. So if you click on analytics, it gives you a few options here. So you could add a constant line. So maybe if you have some kind of threshold that you want to add to your graph, or limit, trend line. So that's what Catalina would probably be interested in. So we could just expand and you click add, and Power BI automatically adds a trend line for you based on your data. And the interesting thing is, if you filter, so if we filter by a particular product category, we could see power supply sales are trending downward. So it works if you filter your data as well. Yeah, so this is definitely what Catalina would have been interested in. Yeah.
So without any filters, this trend line would be based off the totals of
the overall
all products.
Yeah, the overall total for products.
Right.
Yeah. So it would, in this case, we have the time series in terms of month. So it would be based on the overall number of units sold per month. Right. So, so that was a quick way I could show you guys that. And you could add a bunch more things. You could add a main line. So whatever the minimum value is in your entire data set, you could highlight that. The maximum, if we add a max, so you see this is the maximum value. It added a max line, and this is dynamic, right? So if we expand our data and there was some other higher value, it would adjust the max line to whatever that value is, right? What else we have? We have the average line, median, percentile. So really up to you to explore. Right, so I hope that answers Catalina's question. All right, so let's finish up this product analysis page, and I'll show you guys one other cool thing. All right, so we want to show our top 5 best and top 5 worst performing products. And so how do we do that? I like to use a table. And what we want to add here is the product manufacturer. We want to add the product name. And the number of units sold. So let's expand our orders table. And let's pull in units sold. Oops. Right, and let's show you guys another feature. So you could expand this filters tab while you have the table visual selected. And here you could modify some filters on the visual. So you notice, first thing you would notice is that there are 3 levels you could apply this filter to: the visual, to the page, or the entire report. For this purpose, we just want to apply the filter to this table, right? So we work under the filters on this visual tab. We expand product name. Right? And the type of filtering we want to do is top N. Right? And we want to see the top 5 and by value. So it's asking us what criteria is to rank it by, and that is the units sold. Right? So if we click apply, it gives us the top 5 best selling products, right? And to get the worst performing products, you would just copy and paste. So basically duplicate this this table, and you would flip the filter from top 5 to bottom 5 and click apply, and there you have it. And you could sort this accordingly. So lowest number of units sold, these are your top 5 worst performing products, and these are your top 5 performing products. Really simple.
We could probably also give a title to each one of those tables to specify that it's the top 5. Or
yeah, definitely, for clarity, because I guess by just looking at it you might not think about that. So yeah, we could just add a small title here. Top 5 best selling products. Right, enable title on this page, and again we could label this top 5 worst selling products. Cool. Yeah, anything you want to add, Riyad, based on what we did today with DAX and some intermediate comparison analysis.
Well, I just want to point out that although we created our measures, our DAX measures in a certain way, that isn't the only way to go about calculating the same measure.
I agree. I definitely agree. DAX is, you can get really creative with DAX, and there are multiple ways you could achieve the same result using DAX. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess even between us, we have, I guess, different methods, and we achieve the same results.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
And if any of the viewers want to get more information about how different functions work in Power BI, they could always hop over to the Microsoft documentation, and that should help them out. They could also look on the internet and look at specific examples using those functions to see how exactly they work.
Alright guys, so the last thing I wanted to show you guys is the forecasting feature in Power BI. So if you have a line graph here, a simple line graph, we have sales value by month here. So month here is our x-axis, and we're displaying information for, let's see, January to July 2020, and we want to do the forecasting. So very similar to how we did the trend line earlier, we click on our line graph visual, we go to the analytics tab, and here you will see a forecast option. Now the forecast option is limited to a few visuals specifically used on the line graph, and it's important to know that this only works on univariate data, well, meaning that single variable. So in this case, the variable that we're tracking is the sales value, right? So the simple time series forecasting, right? So we click add, and automatically Power BI has spit out this forecast. Right now, there's a couple things we could adjust. The forecast length, so that would indicate how many jumps on our x-axis it would try to predict into the future. So we can limit this. Let's say we just want to see two forecast lengths into the future. So since our axis is month here, it would try to predict for us 2 months into the future. We could also ask it to ignore a number of last points. So if there was some anomaly at the end of the data set here and we wanted to ignore it, you could do that. And the confidence interval just narrows or widens the band of the upper and lower limit of the forecast region. Right, seasonality tends to work with repeating data. So if there's a pattern or a certain number of days or whatever your x-axis is, you notice there's a repeat pattern, you could set how many data points represent a seasonality. Right, so let's just click apply here. And as you can see, by adjusting the forecast length, the graph has adjusted, and we can see forecast data for August and September. Right, so you notice 3 values on our forecast region. There's the dot on the line, which indicates the forecast, and it also gives us this grayed out area, which indicates the region of possible values, so the upper and lower limit of what the forecast value could actually be. All right. So yeah. If you guys are wondering what method Power BI is using to do this forecast, the model it's using is exponential smoothing. So it's predicting based on past observations. And why we say exponential smoothing is because it uses a weighted system that decreases over time. So the longer you forecast, the less accurate it becomes. All right, so you guys could also look up what exponential smoothing is to get a better idea. And yes, so that's the simple forecasting feature in Power BI. And you guys could play around with that. Okay. So that brings us to the end of our video today. On behalf of Riyadh and I would like to thank you guys for joining us. Please like the video, share it with your friends, your colleagues, family, anyone who is interested in data, interested in Power BI, wants to get better at creating reports, or wants to learn tips and tricks. Like the video, subscribe to our channel. We do videos every Wednesday from 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please join us. Looking forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Take care.